worst thing that you would have to do in terms of like sort of market and consumer demand is drywall the walls, right? Like you just tack drywall up to it and tape and mud it like every other house. Part of the idea with not having drywall on the wall and not having flooring on the floor isn't anything other than as a cost-saving measure. What would it be like if we didn't need to put drywall on the outside wall and we didn't have to pay for a flooring? We could just use this as a starting point. And if somebody later down the road said, I hate the trim package and I hate the texture on the walls, well, then drywall it, put in some hardwood flooring. You know, it just gives you some options on the front end, on the cost side, but that's just sort of the reasoning behind it. There's a lot of folks that just want to see drywall thrown up on there. And then it's just like no other house, you know, you're rocking your exterior walls anyways. This house, we also ran Crown, and Chad Schwitter's still sitting over there. That was back when he was 12.
He's aged but not matured.
Here's a outside corner detail of just a basic trim package, and then you can see this is like a sort of an orange peel knockdown texture on the wall. This is a corner where you're finding, this is OSB wall, that's interior partition wall, and that's ceiling. So that's drywall, and OSB. And so the point of this is you can see they taped all three of them there. And then the texture, it kind of all disappears. You can't see it, right? Okay. Let's see. Walls and floors. So walls and ceilings, priming the OSB, drywall taping, texture, flooring. So traditionally, because we also think it's sort of a design trend, but it's cutting edge and it's a cost savings technique, was just sand out the OSB and then put clear coat on there. And everybody's seen pictures of what that finish looks like. It's not what everybody wants, but once again, the cost of doing that versus putting in flooring is pretty good, low cost option. But we also put tile down, laminate, vinyl. Some questions have arose in terms of like, what do you need to do surface prep wise when you're gluing down a floor, or if you're doing a floating floor versus a glue down floor versus a tile floor? And the answer is nothing different than you would do if you were building a regular house and had a regular OSB subfloor, right? If you can glue down to that, you glue down to this. When you put in tile, you got to put some sort of backer in, and highly recommend anti-fracture membrane just for durability, waterproofing, and to make sure that your tile isn't cracking out. We would really love to stay away from any flooring in the basement. You know, what we've done in past projects is done an acid stain on the concrete in the basement, and then put a water-based sealant over that. That's a really good finish. But other than that, there really is, sky's the limit with finishes. I mean, you could make this a $1 million house if you wanted to with finishes. Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions on finishes? Okay. This one has come up often. Okay, so you build the house, and then what happens when you want to remodel? Okay. The short answer is just like any other remodel. You got a discovery period where you start opening the wall up and it's not what you expected, right? And so there's a change order. So that's the simple answer. But you can add on to these houses. It's not that hard to do. It's not ideal, but it's doable, and it just requires somebody with the knowledge to understand what the system is, what the buildup and the layers are. We have a prototype homeowner's manual that goes with the house to the homeowner that would sort of tell them about that and talk about if you're going to do any sort of renovations. You know, window replacement would be like the worst thing you would do on this house, but you know, there's also a future for that in terms of putting like a lifetime like window receiver that then you could have windows exchanged without touching anything on the house. But an addition is something that's possible, but the most feasible, most common remodeling we would expect on this house is just finishing out the basement. So that's pretty straightforward. It's all interior. There shouldn't be any unusual needs with that.
But both house 1 and 2 did bump out little entry rooms?
Yeah, off the back, that's right. Yeah, so they're stick framed and they have ice dams and mold growing in them.
Other than that.
Yep, and they don't have return ducts, right, it's just supply only.
But they don't spend a lot of time in those rooms.
It smells like feet. Alright, God, that was long.
Good job.
Yeah,
Steve,
I'm
is there-
surprised you guys sat through that.